Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Courage in Fur for more amazing dog stories. The metallic symphony of Chicago's Union Station typically hums with purpose, the rhythmic clatter of luggage, the murmur of 1,000 voices, the muffled announcements. It was a kaleidoscope of humanity, each face a fleeting glimpse of a story untold. Officer Marcus Thorne, a man who had navigated the complexities of life and law with a quiet resilience, moved through this vibrant tapestry. His Labrador partner, Hunter, a beacon of calm by his side, they were a familiar sight, an anchor of order in the bustling currents of transit. But then, the familiar rhythm shattered. A sound tore through the station's usual drone, not the sharp bark of an alert, nor the playful yip of a dog. It was a low, resonant rumble, a deep, guttural vibration emanating from Hunter. Marcus knew this sound. In their 5 years together, Hunter's instincts had proven sharper than any surveillance camera, truer than any filed report. This wasn't routine. This was an alarm from the very soul. Marcus's seasoned eyes tracked Hunter's unwavering gaze. Across the concourse, a man stood out, almost unnervingly so. Mr. Wallace Sterling, impeccable in his tailored suit, a picture of effortless confidence. Beside him, a boy, no older than 6, clutched a threadbare teddy bear, his small frame almost swallowed by the vastness of the station. His eyes, though wide, held a disquieting emptiness, a silence that screamed louder than any shout. "Excuse me, sir." Marcus's voice cut through the background hum, calm but laced with an unyielding authority. "Mind if we have a word?" Before Marcus could finish, Mr. Sterling smoothly produced a stack of documents. "Is there an issue, officer?" "I'm a consultant, merely transiting through to Europe with my adopted son, Liam. Everything is, as you can see, perfectly in order. The adoption papers from an esteemed Arizona court, the gleaming visas, the freshly minted passport for Liam Sterling. All seemed unimpeachable, a flawless facade of legality. Yet Hunter remained a motionless anchor, his low rumble persisting. Marcus understood. This wasn't about explosives or narcotics. This was about something far more insidious. How often do we, in our reliance on appearances and official stamps, dismiss the subtler cues, the gut feelings that whisper of deeper truths? Hunter's unique gift was sensing the invisible currents of fear, the subtle ripples of deception, the silent agony of a child. He smelled a soul in torment, a truth screaming to be heard beyond the perfect paperwork. Sometimes, the most urgent warnings don't come with a siren, but with a quiet conviction, an instinct that refuses to be silenced. Despite the flawless documents, Marcus's resolve hardened. "For protocol, sir, I'm going to need you to come with us for a private check." Mr. Sterling agreed, his composure unwavering, a predator's calculated calm that hinted at an unsettling certainty of his untouchable status. As they walked down a quiet side corridor towards a secondary inspection room, Marcus caught a fleeting glimpse in a mirrored wall. Mr. Sterling never once looked at Liam. Not a glance, not a reassuring touch, just the detached gait of someone escorting a piece of luggage. It was a chilling, almost imperceptible detail, but it lodged in Marcus's mind like a shard of ice. Inside the sterile inspection room, the air grew thick with unspoken tension. Hunter remained steadfastly outside the door, a motionless guardian. 5 minutes crawled by, then 10. Each ticking second felt like an eternity, a silent psychological tug-of-war between cold, official data and the unyielding intuition of a dog. Then, a sharp, high-pitched beep sliced through the silence. A stark red alert flashed across the screen. "Invalid child passport. Real name, Omar Caleb. Nationality, Ethiopian. Reported missing 98 days ago." Marcus closed his eyes, a single beat of profound realization. Hunter had never been wrong, and this time the depth of the deception was laid bare. Across the table, Mr. Sterling remained an enigma, merely glancing at his wristwatch, as if this were a trivial delay soon to be cleared up. Beside him, Omar sat motionless, his silence a heavy cloak. More than 20 minutes had passed, and no one had managed to coax a single word from the boy. It wasn't shyness, it was a profound, silent fear that tightened every chest in the room. That's when Miss Evelyn Reed entered, a compassionate social worker known for her gentle approach with traumatized children. She knelt beside Omar, offering a bottle of water, then a piece of paper and a handful of crayons. The simple act of kindness, a non-threatening presence, began to chip away at the boy's carefully constructed wall. Slowly, Omar took a crayon and began to draw. First, a familiar shape emerged, a dog, unmistakably Hunter. Then a plane, and finally a small figure with large sad eyes. "Is that you?" Evelyn asked softly. Omar nodded, almost imperceptibly. "And this man?" Silence. "Is he your daddy?" Omar clutched the crayon tightly, then let it fall. And with a voice so soft it was barely audible, a fragile whisper broke through the fear. "No." That single word, "no," hit the room like thunder, vibrating with raw, unburdened truth. Marcus met Evelyn's eyes. Hunter, who had been watching from the doorway, walked over to Omar. He didn't bark, didn't make a sound. He simply sat beside the boy, gently resting his snout on the child's leg. In that profound, silent connection, Omar looked at the dog and, for the first time, a faint, fragile smile touched his lips. "Your name's Omar, isn't it?" Evelyn asked softly. He nodded. "Can you tell me where your mommy is?" Omar stared at the floor. Another whisper, barely audible. "Addis Ababa. She told me if I ever got lost to say I was looking for her." The truth, a tenacious vine had finally found its light. Sometimes, all it takes is a safe space, a gentle touch, and the unwavering belief of an animal for a long-buried truth to rise. Hours later, Wallace Sterling's flight to Europe was officially cancelled. The mask of composure finally fractured as he was taken into custody, the cold glint of handcuffs now replacing the polished sheen of his suit. A vein throbbed furiously in his temple, a silent testament to the crumbling of his elaborate facade. Meanwhile, in a separate, quieter room, Omar slept curled in Evelyn's arms, Hunter lying protectively at his feet, a furry sentinel against the world. Marcus stepped out into the hallway, a slow, weary exhale escaping his lips. He glanced down at his canine partner, who finally seemed at ease, the tension visibly draining from his powerful frame. "You saw it before any of us, didn't you, buddy?" Marcus whispered, his hand gently scratching behind Hunter's ears. If only everyone truly listened to the barks that warn us of the unseen dangers. It was a sentiment that resonated deeply, a quiet acknowledgement of how often genuine alarms from the marginalized or the instinctual are dismissed by a system reliant solely on paper. The office of the FBI's Child Abduction Unit hummed with a different kind of energy now. The case file for Wallace Sterling thickened with every new report, revealing not just a singular crime but a sinister pattern. His financial records unveiled suspicious transfers between accounts in Switzerland, Texas, and Dubai, a web of illicit transactions that spoke of far more than a simple abduction. Marcus knew this was just the tip of a deeply entrenched iceberg. Elsewhere in the facility, Omar, under Evelyn's gentle care, began to unfurl his story. He sat, drinking warm milk, his crayons moving across the paper. "He told me my mommy had died," Omar whispered, his voice fragile. "He said I had to go with him, that if I cried the bad guys would come." Evelyn listened patiently. "Did you believe him?" she asked, softly. Omar paused, then set his crayon down. He drew a new image on the paper, a dog, brave and loyal. Then he looked up at Evelyn, his eyes clear for the first time. "No," he said with a quiet certainty, "because Mommy would never let me leave without my teddy bear." That worn teddy bear with its drooping ears and patched seams was Omar's lifeline, the only tangible link he had carried from Addis Ababa. It was a child's unwavering logic, a simple truth that shattered a complex lie. Meanwhile, across oceans, French authorities had located Layla Kaleb, Omar's biological mother. She had reported his disappearance 98 days earlier, her desperate cries echoing unheard. No legal counsel, no vast resources, just a mother's raw, agonizing plea, lost in the bureaucratic labyrinth. But this time, it was different. From Chicago, the International Crimes Unit swiftly arranged for her immediate transport, activating an emergency reunification procedure. Marcus received the call at 3 p.m., the words like a balm to his weary soul. "The mother is alive. She's being flown in on a special charter tonight." He closed his eyes, a profound wave of relief washing over him. Hunter, sensing the shift, gently rested his snout on Marcus's knee. The threads of justice, often hidden, are intricately woven into the fabric of everyday moments, but when pulled with courage and conviction, they can unravel the most complex deceptions, bringing forth a glimmer of hope to the seemingly hopeless. When Wallace Sterling was summoned for yet another interrogation, the facade of arrogance he once wore had crumbled into dust. He looked pale, restless, a sheen of sweat clinging to his brow. "What were you planning to do with the child?" the prosecutor demanded. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Sterling muttered, his voice devoid of its former polish, "Because she didn't know what she was doing. Omar needed a real life, a proper education, a future, not emotional chaos. He tried to frame his monstrous act as misguided benevolence, yet he no longer resembled the polished executive. He looked, starkly, like what he truly was, a manipulator with vast resources, desperate to retain control that had irrevocably slipped through his grasp. That night, the air at O'Hare International Airport thrummed with a different kind of anticipation. Layla Caleb stepped off the special charter, her eyes scanning the faces, a silent prayer on her lips. The moment she saw her son across the room, a raw, primal scream tore from her throat. "Omar!" The boy lifted his head, his eyes widening, and he ran. The embrace that followed was so powerful, so deeply profound, that it brought tears to the eyes of more than one hardened officer in the room. Hunter stood a few feet away, motionless, his head tilted slightly, as if recognizing that nameless, universal feeling only dogs can truly sense. The profound reunion of two souls long separated. "Thank you for not giving up," Layla whispered to Evelyn through her tears, clinging to her son. "Thank you for believing in me and in him." Evelyn, her own eyes glistening, replied softly, "We just followed the one who truly saw the truth," her gaze drifting towards Hunter. The complex web of the case was far from fully untangled, but that night, for the first time in over 3 months, a mother and her child slept peacefully under the same roof. Dawn arrived gently at the Family Protection Center, just outside Chicago. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, bathing the small room where Omar finally slept soundly, wrapped securely in his mother's arms. Layla Caleb hadn't slept a wink, not out of fear but from the overwhelming, joyous need to simply gaze upon her son, alive, safe, pulled back from a nightmare the world had refused to see, save for one steadfast dog. Officer Marcus Thorne watched from the hallway, cradling a cup of cold coffee, the weight of the past few hours heavy on his shoulders. Hunter rested quietly at his feet. "Do you want to go in?" a nurse whispered. Marcus shook his head. "Not now. Let them have this moment. Just the two of them." Hunter lifted his head, swiveled one ear, then slowly laid it back down, calm, peaceful, as if acknowledging that the most crucial part of their mission was complete. Later that morning, at the U.S. Attorney's Office, a high-level investigation officially opened, expanding the scope of the crisis. Multiple officials in Arizona were now under intense scrutiny for their complicity in enabling the creation of false legal documents on behalf of Wallace Sterling. The forged signature seals and fraudulent custody certificates were not isolated incidents. They were revealed to be part of a sophisticated, well-oiled machine of corruption. Early findings indicated that at least 3 other children had been adopted in disturbingly similar ways. Some were still missing, lost in the shadows. Others were found trapped in precarious legal gray zones, their lives hanging in the balance.
The case was now spreading beyond national borders, a stark reminder that injustice, once exposed, often reveals deeper, more widespread rot. Justice isn't just about apprehending the individual criminal, it's about dismantling the systemic structures that enable their heinous acts to thrive. And sometimes a single act of courage, even from a quiet, 4-legged hero, can illuminate the path to a far-reaching reckoning. Back at the family center, Omar wanted only one thing: to rediscover the simple joy of playing in the sunny backyard. The little boy tossed a red ball across the vibrant green grass. Hunter, leash-free, command-free, chased after it with pure, unbridled instinct. Evelyn, the social worker, watched from the porch beside Layla, a quiet smile gracing her lips. "I've never seen him like this," Layla murmured, her voice filled with a warmth absent for weeks. He used to be so quiet, no laughter, he'd sleep with his eyes half open, and now, just look at him. "He's not doing it for us," Evelyn replied softly. "He's doing it for Hunter. That dog was the first to truly earn his trust, to break through the fear." Layla looked towards Hunter, who sat with the ball in his mouth, tail wagging, as if understanding every word of their praise. "What happens to him now?" Layla asked, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "He's nearing retirement," Evelyn explained. "Years of service. Some officers are already working to get him adopted into a loving home." A thought sparked in Layla's mind, daring and hopeful. What if we adopt him? Evelyn turned, her expression a mix of surprise and understanding. "You want to?" "I don't just want to," Layla said, her voice firm with conviction. "I need to. Omar doesn't feel safe without him. Neither do I. That dog didn't just save us physically. He gave us something back we thought we'd lost forever: our ability to trust." Evelyn nodded slowly, a quiet promise in her eyes. "I see what I can do." That same day, in a quiet but resolute press conference, the district attorney's spokesperson confirmed the official arrest of Wallace Sterling and the commencement of legal proceedings for international kidnapping, document fraud, and institutional manipulation. The press had barely scratched the surface of the sprawling scandal, but for Marcus, the true headline wasn't splashed across the front page. It was found outside in that small backyard where Omar's laughter rang out for the first time in 98 days. It was visible in Layla, who could finally hold her son without the crippling fear of losing him again, and it was embodied by Hunter, lying peacefully in the grass, eyes closed, breathing easy. That night, Marcus stayed a little longer, just him and Hunter. He placed his hand gently on the dog's broad back and whispered, "Sometimes protocol isn't enough, is it, old friend? Sometimes it takes a heart and a nose that simply refuses to be fooled." Hunter didn't reply. He just wagged his tail, a silent affirmation. He knew there were still shadows left to uncover, more injustices lurking, but for now, at least a mother and son slept peacefully. And a dog, by daring to disobey, had irrevocably done the right thing. The federal courthouse in downtown Atlanta was packed, yet completely silent, the air heavy with anticipation. Cameras were banned, but court microphones captured every hushed word. At the back, under stark, unforgiving white lights, sat Wallace Sterling, his brow furrowed, handcuffed wrists glinting, the man who once believed himself beyond the reach of the law. At the front, Layla Caleb sat composed, her hair neatly tied back, her eyes locked with unwavering intensity onto the face of the man who had stolen her child. And in the witness seat, little Omar held his teddy bear tightly in one hand while the other rested gently on Hunter's head. The dog lay at his feet, a silent, steadfast sentinel. "Do you recognize these documents, Mr. Sterling?" the federal prosecutor asked, holding up a thick folder filled with incriminating papers. "I have nothing to declare," Sterling replied for the third time, his voice a flat monotone. But his defiance no longer mattered. The forged documents, the shady wire transfers, the undeniable links to corrupt officials, everything was meticulously laid out. Evidence was overwhelming. What remained was to hear the truth from those whose voices had been silenced for far too long. Layla drew in a deep, fortifying breath as the judge gave her the floor. "For months," she began, her voice steady but strained, imbued with the weight of her journey, "they told me I was overreacting. They said I was being emotional, that I had no proof, that he was a respectable man and I was just a foreign single mother." She looked at Omar, then back to the judge, her gaze unwavering. "My son lived in fear, couldn't sleep, couldn't speak, and no one listened. Not the system, not the police. No one found him." She then turned, her eyes fixed on Hunter. "Except this dog." The courtroom didn't stir, no coughs, no whispers, just the profound weight of truth filling the air, palpable and undeniable. "He barked when no one else did," Layla continued, her voice gaining strength. "He smelled what others refused to see." The prosecutor stood again, her voice clear and resonant. "Your Honor, this case is not just about one abduction. It reveals a system that often protects the powerful and willfully ignores the voiceless. Today, we have the chance to begin correcting that." The verdict arrived 3 hours later, swift, clear, unappealable. Wallace Sterling was found guilty of international kidnapping, falsifying legal documents, and institutional manipulation. He was denied bail and ordered into immediate custody. Full legal custody of Omar was granted back to Layla, with robust protective measures put in place to prevent any future threats. There were no cheers, just a profound, collective silence, one of those rare, deep silences that doesn't weigh you down, but rather lifts something heavy from your chest. Omar looked at his mom and smiled. Hunter, as if sensing the historical significance of the moment, rose to his feet, walked to Layla's side, and gently rested his head on her leg. Outside the courthouse, journalists swarmed for comment, a hungry throng eager for sound bites, but Layla and Omar said nothing. Instead, they posed for a single, unplanned photo. Mother, child, and dog. A simple image. Honest. Unshakable. The next morning's headlines screamed the truth for all to see. The dog who disobeyed and saved a child from disappearing forever. 1 month later, Hunter was officially retired from service in a small but deeply emotional ceremony at the Department of Justice in Chicago. He was awarded a Medal of Valor for his extraordinary instinct and years of dedicated service, but the medal, as significant as it wasn't the most meaningful part. It was the paperwork signed right after, the legal adoption documents. Hunter was now officially part of the Caleb family. In their new home just outside the city, Hunter found his favorite spot beneath Omar's bedroom window. Sometimes Omar still woke in the night, startled by fading nightmares, the lingering tendrils of fear. But when he heard the steady, comforting breathing of his dog beside the bed, he would drift back into peaceful sleep, knowing he was safe. Layla, meanwhile, had begun therapy, not just to recover from the trauma, but to rebuild her life, piece by piece. She no longer spoke in a hushed voice, no longer avoided eye contact. She had regained more than just her child. She had reclaimed her dignity, her voice. One crisp fall afternoon, Officer Marcus visited them again. He brought a small, worn photo album. They sat on the porch like old friends, flipping through the images, snapshots of the extraordinary journey that had irrevocably changed all their lives. Sometimes I think it was all a miracle, Marcus mused, looking at a photo of Omar hugging Hunter, a profound sense of wonder in his voice. Layla shook her head gently, a quiet strength in her gaze. It wasn't a miracle. It was a dog who refused to follow an order, a man who dared to look beyond rigid protocol, and a child who never, ever stopped hoping someone would come find him. Marcus lowered his gaze, lost in thought. Hunter approached quietly, rested his snout on the officer's knee, and closed his eyes. No one said anything. They didn't have to. The quiet understanding between them spoke volumes. That night, Layla wrote in her journal, the words flowing effortlessly, a testament to her renewed spirit. True heroism doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it walks quietly beside us, smells our fear, and lays down next to us when the world falls apart. Sometimes it has 4 legs and a heart bigger than our own. She closed the notebook, kissed her sleeping son's forehead, and she knew, at last, fear no longer lived in that house. And the dog who dared to break the silence had, against all odds, rebuilt everything. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in the power of unseen heroes and the profound importance of listening to the quietest warnings, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs a powerful reminder that hope always finds a way, even in the darkest corners of injustice. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Courage in Fur, where we celebrate compassion, unwavering loyalty, and the extraordinary beings, both human and animal, who truly make a difference. Your support helps us continue to tell more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, courage and empathy can rebuild everything. Thank you for listening.